quiet small town is torn apart when its residents begin acting violently, without warning or reason. Sheriff David Dutton suspects something sinister, but before he can react, the town descends into chaos. As friends turn into killers and the military moves in with deadly force, David and a small group must escape before they become the next victims of the madness. To know what happened, watch till the ends. The movie starts with a brief scene showing the small farming town of Ogden Marsh in flames. Then, we jump back 2 days earlier and meet Dr. Judy Dutton and her assistant Becca, a high school student. Becca tries to lie to Judy, saying her aunt is visiting, so she needs to leave work early. But reality is she's dating Scotty, and he wants her at the baseball game that afternoon. Judy finds she is lying, but allows her to go. At the baseball game, we're introduced to Sheriff David Dutton, who is also Judy's husband, and his deputy, Russell. While watching the game, they notice a man walking onto the field from right field, holding a shotgun. David quickly recognizes him as Rory, the town drunk. Sensing trouble, David tells the kids to get into the dugout and moves toward Rory. Rory seems dazed, almost in a trance, as David orders him to lower his weapon. Instead, Rory aims the gun at David. In response, David places his hand on his holster, warning him one last time. With the crowd watching, Rory lifts the gun to fire, and David reacts instantly, shooting him dead. That night, David meets with the coroner and mortician, Jim, who tells him the blood alcohol test results of Rory will be ready by morning. Meanwhile, Rory's wife, Peggy, and their son, Kurt, arrive, furious over what happened. Peggy insists Rory quit drinking 2 years ago and assumes David has been telling people he was drunk. In her anger, she slaps David before storming out. The next day, Judy tells David that she's pregnant and he heads out for work. At his office, David gets a call from Jim and is shocked to learn that Rory's blood alcohol level was 0. He wasn't drunk at all. At the clinic, Judy is visited by a worried woman, Deardra, who asks her to check on her husband, Bill. He has been acting strangely and seems completely unresponsive. Judy runs a few tests and becomes alarmed when Bill keeps repeating the same answer to every question. Before sending them home, she tells Deardra that Bill needs a CT scan on Monday. That night, Deardra and her son, Nicholas, realize Bill is missing and hear the harvester running in the barn. Deardra tells Nicholas to stay inside while she goes to check. She finds the harvester running, but empty. After shutting it off, she suddenly hears Nicholas scream from inside the house. Rushing back, she doesn't see him at first, but then he appears and quickly pulls her into a closet, terrified. He tells her that Bill tried to attack him with a knife. They hear Bill's footsteps outside, but he already knows they're in the closet and locks them inside. Moments later, he douses the house in gasoline, leaving a trail outside before setting it on fire. By the time David and Judy arrive at the scene, it's too late. Firefighters inform them that Deardra and Nicholas died in the fire, while Bill was found calmly mowing the lawn. Meanwhile, 3 hunters come across a pilot's body in the marsh and notify David. He and Russell investigate, realizing that if the pilot is here, the plane must have crashed nearby. Russell mentions that a local claimed to have heard something big crash into the lake, so they decide to check it out. At the lake, they find a large military plane submerged underwater. As the camera zooms out, we see a military satellite view, and the words "Initiate Containment Protocol" appear on the screen. David quickly realizes that a plane this size crashing without making the news means something is being covered up. They check the town's water supply and discover that the lake's water flows directly into the drinking supply, starting with Rory's house, then Bill and Deardra's. Suspecting the water is contaminated, David urges the mayor to shut it off, but the mayor refuses. So, David takes matters into his own hands and shuts it off himself. Back at the station, Russell finds Bill in the holding cell, bloody and unconscious on the ground. As he steps closer, David warns him to wait. Suddenly, in a terrifying jump scare, Bill, now heavily infected, springs up, screaming and trying to attack them from behind the bars. David attempts to call for help, but finds all the phone lines are dead. Even worse, the internet and cell service are also down across town. Stepping outside, he notices the streets are eerily empty, except for a black van parked at the end of the road. As he tries to approach it, the van speeds off, but not before snapping several pictures of him. Hearing glass shatter at mortuary, David rushes inside to check on him. In the mortuary, he stumbles upon the local reverend, still alive, but with his eyes and mouth sewn shut. Before David can react, an infected Jim attacks from behind, swinging a small circular saw. Jim manages to cut David's shoulder, but David yanks the cord, causing Jim to slice himself open instead. Jim drops the saw, which spins dangerously toward David, who is lying on the floor, until Russell steps in and stops it just in time. Later, David tells Judy to pack up and leave, but she refuses, arguing that as the town's doctor, it's her duty to help. Their argument is cut short when Judy sees someone enter their garage. David goes to investigate, but as soon as he steps inside, Judy suddenly screams. He rushes back out, only to be ambushed by soldiers in military gear. David and Judy are loaded onto a bus filled with other townspeople, including Russell, who says his car was stopped with a spike trap as he tried to leave town. They're all taken to the local high school, where the military, dressed in hazmat suits, is separating people and forcing them through processing tents. As Judy and David are pushed further along, Russell is pulled away from the group. Watching the process, Judy realizes the soldiers are checking temperatures, likely looking for signs of infection. Since Rory and Bill had nosebleeds, she deduces that the illness must be a virus causing cerebral hemorrhaging. When it's her turn, Judy's temperature is found to be high, and she's immediately separated from David. He fights back but is knocked out by a guard. Later, he wakes up in a truck with others who have been transported to a gas station on the edge of town. The military places wristbands on them and begins bussing people out, suggesting that only those deemed uninfected are allowed to leave. As many people are being led to the buses, David decides to go back into town to save Judy, believing her high fever is caused by pregnancy. A truck drives by. David suddenly vanishes. At the high school, Judy is tied to a bed along with others, including Becca, when alarms start ringing. Outside, a group of armed, infected people break through the barriers and start shooting at the military and townspeople. Chaos erupts as several infected escape through the fence and run in different directions. The infected attack the soldiers, who refer to them as crazies. The military decides to retreat, leaving behind restrained people like Judy and Becca. Meanwhile, at the sheriff's office, David takes a gun and meets up with Russell, who managed to escape during the chaos. Back at the high school, an infected man starts killing the restrained people with a pitchfork. Just as he is about to kill Becca, Judy screams to distract him. He then turns to attack Judy, but David arrives just in time and shoots him in the chest. David, Judy, Becca, and Russell manage to escape the high school. They search the town for a working vehicle, but every car they find is either locked down or destroyed. The group finds a truck that isn't locked down, but realizes it belongs to infected hunters who are killing townspeople for fun. After barely escaping them, they decide their best option is to walk 5 miles through farmland to reach David's garage, where he has an old cruiser. As they pass through one of the farms, Becca recognizes it as Scotty's family farm and runs off to find him. When she does, Scotty holds her and Russell at gunpoint, unsure if they're infected. David sneaks up behind him, takes his gun, and Scotty quickly apologizes. Hearing the military approaching, David orders everyone into the barn. However, Scotty's mother is inside the house, and when soldiers drag her out, they realize she's infected. Scotty runs out toward her, but the soldiers shoot and kill them both. Then, they burn their bodies with a flamethrower. The military orders a search of the area, and one soldier enters the barn. Russell and David quickly grab him, take his weapon, and remove his mask to question him. The soldier explains they were only told there was an accident and didn't realize where they were until they saw the license plates. Russell wants to kill him, fearing he'll alert the others, but David lets him go. He likely does this to avoid the obvious outcome, getting burned alive by the soldiers if they realize one of their men is missing. The soldier tells his team the barn is clear and they all leave. The next morning, the group arrives at David and Judy's home. While Russell and Becca prepare the car, David and Judy go inside to gather supplies. Before leaving, Judy walks in a nursery they had set up and doesn't notice Peggy, Rory's infected wife, lurking in the corner. David goes to check on Judy and finds her tied to a chair. Before he can react, Kurt, Rory's son, attacks him and starts choking him. David struggles to reach his fallen gun, but Peggy stabs his hand and takes the weapon. She points the gun at Judy, but David taunts her about Rory's death, forcing her to turn the gun on him instead. When she does, he knocks the gun away, elbows Kurt off him, and pulls the knife from his own hand to stab Peggy in the neck. Peggy collapses, but Kurt now has the gun and takes his time aiming, giving Russell enough time to shoot him through the window. The group gets in the cruiser and drives out of town, but a military helicopter spots them, forcing them to hide in a car wash. As they wait, the conveyor suddenly activates, pulling the car forward. As the car is covered in soap, several infected appear and attack. Though the group manages to fight them off, one infected strangles Becca with a tube and hangs her. The group quickly cuts her down, but as they exit the car wash, the military helicopter blows up the vehicle behind them. With no other choice, Russell, David, and Judy continue walking along the road toward the next city. After some time, the group comes upon Russell's car, which was spike-trapped by the military the day before. While they search it for supplies, the group spot a black military SUV heading their way, and David decides they're going to steal it. Unfortunately, Russell has a different shitty plan and lays down a spike trap, causing the SUV to crash and roll over. Russell rushes over to the car to kill the driver, but David tells him he wants to talk to him first. The officer tells the group that the plane that crashed was carrying a biological weapon known as Trixie, a rhabdoviridity prototype, and it was headed to an incinerator in Texas. Rhabdoviridity is a virus commonly associated with rabies. The officer informs them that the infection takes 48 hours to show symptoms. If they're still healthy after that, they don't have it. David tells the officer that since they're not sick, he'll help them escape town. However, Russell, who is clearly infected, suddenly shoots the officer in the head. As Russell searches the car, David takes his gun, but Russell quickly pulls out another weapon and turns it on him. He forces David and Judy to walk ahead so he can keep an eye on them. After a while, David tries to reason with Russell, and once Russell lowers his gun, David punches him in the face. Russell, realizing he's infected, asks to stay with them for a little longer. That night, the three spot a military checkpoint and hide to figure out how to get past it. Russell decides to sacrifice himself to distract the guards, wanting his death to have meaning. David reluctantly agrees, and as Russell is gunned down, he and Judy manage to sneak past. They reach the gas station where uninfected people have been loaded onto buses the night before. David searches the store and finds a semi-truck they can use, while Judy makes a horrifying discovery. The uninfected weren't evacuated, they were all killed. Deciding to use the truck to escape, David gathers supplies like water and a lighter. Meanwhile, Judy doesn't realize an infected person is silently watching her. David hears a military radio transmission warning that something will happen in 10 minutes. Following the sound of another radio, he realizes the infected hunter's truck is parked at the gas station, meaning they're nearby. Suddenly, the power goes out. Judy avoids the hunters by hiding in a storage room filled with bodies. David then suddenly appears behind her in a jump scare, and the two rush to the semi-truck. As Judy climbs in with a gun, David grabs the keys, but is ambushed by two infected hunters. Judy shoots one of them, while David douses the other in oil and sets him on fire. After another forced jump scare, Judy pulls David into the truck, and they speed out of town. Moments later, the countdown reaches 0, and a massive explosion wipes Ogden Marsh off the map. The shockwave flips their truck, causing it to crash. David and Judy crawl out of the wreck, injured but alive, as they look back at the remains of their town. Later, they arrive at the outskirts of Cedar Rapids. As the camera zooms out, a satellite watches them, and the words "Initiate Containment Protocol" appear on screen. In the mid-credits scene, a news report states that Ogden Marsh was destroyed in a chemical explosion, with another blast at a gas station. The broadcast is then interrupted by images of an infected person attacking the screen. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more interesting movie recaps.